Our tagline is love over logistics, I love that, right? We want people to spend time with their loved ones, and that's the important thing here. How do we pay for that is a different question, but you know, I want people to talk about caregiving. I think it's something a lot of people are going through, and they just don't even really talk about it in their work lives and their personal lives, and so something to that effect.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders in Tech, the podcast where we're shining the light in leaders in technology that are changing this world for a better place. Today we have with us Kevin Roach. How are you doing, Kevin?
Great. How are you?
Did I said your name, your last name?
It's close. It's Roach, like the bug.
Okay, I didn't know how to pronunciate it. So, Kevin, welcome to the show, brother. Can you tell me for the audience again your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Sure. So my name is Kevin Roach. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of a startup called Wealthy.
Wealthy. What do you guys do?
Wealthy does care coordination. So if you are taking care of a loved one and you're dealing with all the logistics that go with that, we can help you through that by navigating the system for you with a care coordinator who will take care of all the project management and guidance that needs to be done there.
Now, so you're talking about somebody that needs medical care?
Yep. So typical scenario might be a parent who is aging, and you might be dealing with a variety of situations around that. But we also, help with all stages of life. Could be a child with various needs, or a spouse with cancer. It's really all the project management that goes with having a loved one that you're caring for, and we'll help do everything from finding living facilities, finding in-home aides, disputing insurance bills, optimizing your benefits, helping you find support and mental health options, and a lot of other things. We're essentially a concierge.
That is a beautiful thing, and I never heard about such idea or making it into a profitable business. How did this come about? Since you're the co-founder, we can go a little bit into startup mode, which I love, by the way.
Of course. Yeah, we're 10 years in now, so it's been a journey. But back in 2014, I met my co-founder, and she's the CEO. And it was really her story that inspired the business. She had been caring for her mother for multiple decades, who had progressive MS. And she realized that it was really a gap in our system that really becomes a second job for someone. And we sell Wealthy as an employer benefit for this reason, right? If you're trying to be a full-time working professional and you have something like this going on in your life, it really becomes an issue with trying to be able to show up for work or even keep your job, because you might have to go in person to go handle some of these things.
That's amazing. So you are the technology behind, you created the technology behind the first, let's say, MVP, and then she is the one that created the idea. What were you doing before that?
So prior to Wealthy, I worked in the finance industry for most of my career, and I have to say it wasn't something I was particularly passionate about. I kind of fell into that through school and after school. But yeah, I worked mainly at Goldman Sachs for about 7.5 years in a variety of roles during that time. I actually started there right before the financial crisis, actually supporting the mortgages desk. So very interesting times.
Did you survive? You didn't get let go?
I did. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Later, I moved to a different area and helped support what they were doing with social impact investing, and I really enjoyed that. But ultimately, just had that startup itch, and especially wanted it to be a mission-driven pursuit, something that I knew was helping everyday people in an important way.
I completely resonate with what you're saying. There is a point in your career, especially for us technologies, right? There is a point in your career where you find that everything you're writing is meaningless. And it's not easy to write code. It's not easy to support systems. And then when you find out that it's just maybe I don't know, to add zeros to a bank account that already has billions of dollars on it, it's like, what am I doing this for? Why am I breaking my brains and spending my life in something that I don't see value in? That's why I'm doing this show, by the way, because I got to that point in my life many times. And so that the first startup that I helped write. So I was you with a company that these two ladies, they were school administrators for large schools here in Canada, and they wanted to really revolutionize the way schools worked, school financials work, because these ladies were getting overrun. All the school administrators were getting overrun with the billing and cash systems, and all the accounting packages, all the ERPs were operated at the board level. So a school system in Canada, I don't know how it works in the US, but you have a school board that acts like a franchisor, and then you have all the schools that are franchisees, and they all report to the board. So all the technology, everything stayed at the board level, but there was nothing deployed to the schools. And these schools had 5,000 kids, 10,000 kids. It wasn't small schools, right? And so like you, they asked me, hey, we have this idea, but we don't know how to write software. So I was employee number one, or actually I wasn't a co-founder, because I was actually really getting paid until finally they were almost bankrupt, and then I got shares. And to make the long story short, it was beautiful, but I held them number one because I really liked the idea that they were going to make life easier for the administrators, but especially for the kids. Yeah. Now, if you look at that companies, I think it's more than $100 million now. It's been sold a couple of times, and now they created something beautiful that, there is a portal now where parents can go see where the kids are spending their money, and they don't bring cash anymore, they bring a card. And then with the card, they have limits, and the parents get to decide what type of food they eat, or how often, or what do they, it's not a free for all like before, when you give $10 to your kid and you don't know what they're spending the money on, right? Yeah. But it brought purpose to my life, right? And that's why I'm doing this podcast now, to actually bring purpose to my life through sharing amazing stories. But to you, Kevin, what made that shift after working for so long in fintech? What was that catalyst? Why do you decided to actually jump into something that had more meaning for your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I was thinking about for quite a while. I'm not the type of person who just makes a decision and leaps overnight. And I was kind of processing this, in the earlier years of my career there, I was living in a financial district as well, and walking through Occupy Wall Street protests to get into the building, and having people, in my personal life questioning why I worked where I did, and how do I justify what was happening in the mortgages crisis and so on. And, I didn't really have great answers. I also wasn't there. I didn't create the problem, but, it was interesting for me to just try to process and think about all those things. And, at the same time, I was working hard, long hours, solving what I thought were really interesting technical problems. And, eventually realized there are interesting technical problems anywhere if you dig, and it's kind of a multiplier effect if you also get satisfied by what those problems are solving. And I had a good friend in school who I'd reconnected with, and they were like, you'd always talked about doing a startup. Are you ever going to do that? Basically calling me complacent. I'd gotten that comfy job, and I call it like a quarter life crisis or something. I wasn't that old yet, but I was kind of like, wait, this isn't what I want to do for my whole career. I want to, seek something more fulfilling. I think a lot of people chase happiness and maybe think that money can get that. To me, it's like, if I'm going to spend the majority of my waking hours on my work, I want that to be meaningful. And for me, that fulfillment is more important than happiness.
That's beautiful. Now, once you decided to actually jump on something like this, how did the opportunity present itself?
Yeah, I just started networking a lot. Like I said, I wanted to do a startup. I didn't personally have the idea that I was going to quit my job and go pursue. And I knew generally, I had some categories I was interested in, and knew that I needed to build my network. I, as a technologist, was not particularly interested in some of the sales side aspects of a startup and raising money from investors and all that. I knew I needed a strong co-founder with a business sense, and really started seeking that. And I just went to a lot of events, signed up for a lot of different things to meet people, kind of started putting myself out there. I actually remember I had a big birthday brunch one year where I declared to all my friend group that I planned to quit my job within the next year. And it was a big surprise to them, but I needed to put that out into the world that like I was looking for this change. And, you increase the surface area that, luck will bring you opportunities, and you find and meet people. Um, but eventually, I met a lot of people and dabbled on some various things before I met my current co-founder, and that helped me, right? I had worked on a different side project for like almost a year before I met my current co-founder, and the difference was night and day. And I knew when I met her that she was fully in, she was committed. This was a personal problem that she deeply understood and was going to figure out how to solve. She had a lot of great connections, and was already off to the races full time on it. So I knew this was real. And she, at the same time, genuinely respected me as a thought partner. And not a lot of other people I've met that were just like, I have a great idea, I just need someone to write code. And that was important to me, that this was a solution that the technology was also going to be a big important role in it.
You know how many times I heard that? I have a great idea, I just need you to write code.
Yeah.
At the
That's not what
beginning, I actually
co-founder is.
fell many times into it. I was like, oh, it looks like a great idea. And here I am investing a lot of money again and losing a lot of money again.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, we didn't know exactly what the solution would end up looking like. We knew there was a big problem and an opportunity, and that we would iterate and go after it and figure out how to solve it.
That's amazing, Kevin. I am a man of faith. I actually lost my faith for many, many years because I got so much into science, and without realizing, I fell out of my faith. But 2 years ago, the Lord restored me, and I'm telling this in a technical podcast, in a leadership podcast, because you mentioned that you declared to the world that you were going to quit your job within 1 year, and you had no idea what you were going to do. In the Christian world where I live, that's called a prophetic word. So basically, you're making a declaration saying, it's done. I'm done doing this. I don't know what the Lord is going to bring to my path, but I know it's going to happen. And that's called faith. That's all it is faith, right? So you had a step of faith. And then, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Just the fact that you and I are talking right now, and you're bringing all this social aspect of your enterprise. Most of my guests on Leaders in Tech is, CIOs, CTOs of, multi-billion-dollar corporations or even startups, but all 100% focus on the leadership part. And now here we are talking about how you're helping families go through this terrible time in their life. Well, they have to provide for them.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
now,
sure.
How do you make it into a business? That's still like,
well, that's
the hard
part, right?
But you have to still make payroll, right?
Yeah. So we started as a direct-to-consumer business, and that was challenging, right? So like, people didn't see this as a product category that they would Google for or look for, elsewhere. They would think for, targeted solutions of specific things going on in their life. And, there is kind of this transition people go through as they're becoming a caregiver. They often think that they'll just solve this one problem and things will go back to normal the way it was, right? It might be like, oh, I need to find a rehab facility for my mom, or I need to find an in-home aid, or whatever it is. And the reality is, like, there's going to be more, and you need, just like you might get a financial advisor to be with you on this lifelong journey to plan for retirement or other things, right? We see our care coordinators as that counterpart for caregiving and for your family, and they get to know you and stay with you for the long run. Unfortunately, that wasn't like a thing people looked for, right? So like, getting growth through direct to consumer was challenging. We had, some success with that. We had a private pay model. People would pay monthly subscription out of pocket. Those were our first users. And we had some people who were evangelists, loved it. but growing that sustainably was challenging. So we started experimenting with a lot of other growth channels, really trying to figure out how can we get people to pay for this. And after a lot of experimentation, really hit on employer benefits model. And this was actually an insight from one of our early private pay members. They worked in HR at a company, and they said, "My company should offer this." And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because if you are a working professional going through this, you have to engage with the healthcare system during working hours. You're sitting on hold with doctors' offices, insurance companies, faxing documents, God knows what, right? Or missing work to go figure out, what has to happen.
And your productivity goes down the drain. And that's
Yeah,
not good for the company that is employing you.
exactly. Productivity, retention, presenteeism. We have a whole white paper that was published last year from Harvard and HBS that was on the ROI of a caregiving benefit. And it's now a category. Like, we basically created this benefits category that didn't exist. It took
That's
years.
amazing.
We have competitors now who are, kind of mimicking us, and it's nice to see it's becoming like a known thing that's expected, right? And we've expanded into a number of different verticals. We have companies that are not just, we started, had a lot of early companies in big tech, but now we're in everything from like retail to oil and gas to financial companies, you name it. They're all starting to realize this is a really important thing to support your workers with.
Was it hard to raise the funds at the beginning because of your business model?
I mean, I think it was also important for us to find the right investors who
Yeah.
understood the mission and were going to be patient for us to figure it out, and so on, right? And so we had some early angel investors, and then we did a small seed round, and those were really important for us. And then we got into a program called Hearst Lab. So Hearst, the media company, basically started a program for women-led startups, and we were one of the first to go through that. They invested in us as part of that and have been huge supporters throughout that journey. And they, also were willing to offer us as a benefit, right? They were kind of one of our first large clients, and we made sure that we knocked it out of the park, and were able to show that, and then kind of unlocked more from there. But so that
How, how,
strategic investor relationship was really critical to us.
how beautiful it is to have your primary investor as your Springboard client.
Yeah,
That's, that's how rare that is. And you're talking to somebody that has been writing code for 30 years. One of my main companies do a lot of startup software where, companies start starting up, they don't know how to scale, and we teach them how to scale, how to build standards in their tech, and then we let them go as they become mature. And we have to say no 9 out of 10 times because I don't see a product market fit. Or if they have the product market fit, I don't see the Springboard client. I don't see how they can penetrate to have the first client that is going to propel them to success. And you got this out of your investor. You know how awesome is that?
yeah, yeah. It was, sounds easier in retrospect. This was like a multi-year journey with a lot of, I wouldn't say pivots, but thinking about, are we selling it the right way, and how do we reach more, and so on. But yeah, the employer market has been great for us, and I have to say the pandemic actually ended up accelerating that. I think it really shifted how employers were thinking about supporting their employees, and obviously during that time period, certain perks like a free gym membership or dry cleaning was less important. And when you're trying to figure out how to care for your parents or some other family member, that's going to be the thing that's top of mind for your employees. And all of a sudden, we started to see this shift with a lot of large employers coming to knock on our doors and say, "Hey, we got a caregiving benefits RFP." We're like, amazing.
Right. That's incredible. So it quickly shifted from being a direct to consumer into a business to business solution.
Yeah, and I should say we still offer the direct consumer option, and part of that is because we feel it's important to offer this to anybody who needs our support. Not everyone's fortunate yet to work for an employer who offers us as a benefit. also you have scenarios where an employee leaves their employer and, we can allow them to convert into a private paying member and continue getting our support.
That is amazing, Kevin. Now, tell me, how was this transition? I did this transition myself, and I if it wasn't for the support of my wife, financially and emotionally, I wouldn't been able to say, I'm going to start my first company and I'm going to get rid of my 6-figure, high-end paying CTO job or, leader in technology job. You were in Wall Street, and those are the highest paying jobs in technology, right?
Yeah.
How was that decision making from being so secure financially, going down to, I don't know when I'm going to get my next paycheck if I don't raise more money?
Yeah. No, that was obviously, a hard thing to adapt to, but I think I kind of also saw that if I was going to do this, I was at a stage in my life where that was like a good time. Because I had worked on Wall Street for a number of years at that point, I did have some healthy savings. And so it wasn't like I would have nothing in the bank and not be able to pay rent on the first month or something. And at the same time, I also, I didn't have kids or other dependents or a mortgage. And so I was like, okay, like I can, be a little bit more frugal for a period of time. And it was also, I had been dating my now wife for a few years at that point. And she was very supportive, I have to say. And it's actually kind of funny. The same week I quit my job was the week that I proposed. And we obviously went through with it. But, I was happy to see that it was like obvious, she was not in it before the Wall Street money. It was really about who I am and what I wanted to do. And she was probably my biggest supporter during this whole journey. And, later, and I've been supporting her as she's been also thinking about career changes and so on. And so I think that's been a really important aspect of our partnership.
I think when you have this type of dramatic shifts in your life, you don't have a partner that actually gives you all their support. It's very hard to accomplish,
Yeah, the other thing I'd say was I also went into it with this mindset that if this fails, it will be an amazing educational opportunity for me and probably cheaper than going back to get a master's degree or some kind of other actual educational, cost. And, even within that first year when we launched and started helping people, we started getting incredible testimonials. And I knew we had already done something important. We've already changed the lives of a few people. Even if we don't get off the ground and scale to millions of people, we've already done something that was meaningful, and that would always be worth it on top of everything I was learning in the process. And I was sure I could probably find another corporate job if I ever needed to.
That's one thing that kept me going too when I started my business 19 years ago. Every time that I didn't sell anything and I was having, to go out of the cash reserves, I was like, okay, I can always get a job. To the point that, remember the monsters.com sites, the Workopoly sites, I make sure I get my resume up to date on all those sites. And I had headhunters asking me if I wanted to get hired by other companies. And I remember having that as my stability, especially when it was very hard financially in the company in the first 5 years. All of a sudden we'll get a headhunter's call saying, hey, we have this amazing director's role. Would you like to apply for it? I'm like, no, thanks. But in my mind was like, okay, I'm good. The worst thing that could happen is I go bankrupt and I have to go get another job, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I don't know if this is true, but I would tell myself that I would probably actually be more valuable on the job market having done this than if I had just stayed in my one role, because I was wearing so many hats, doing so many things and learning so many things that I would never have been exposed to just staying in the job I was in, that I suspected it would be even more valuable than if I had just spent that same time in the same job I was in before.
You're completely right, Kevin. I remember one of my last jobs, so I was always a leader in the software section. And I always had a counterpart that was doing infrastructure and maintenance and all that. So this guy, he was, at the top of the company with me, and he had a business for 10 years, a successful business. And then at the end, he got tired of the grind. He got tired of the 18-hour-a-day type scenarios, and he could never scale it to the way that he could delegate. So he just closed down the business. He didn't lose money. He just closed down the business, delegated his clients to other partners, and he got another job. And he says, I remember saying, I am the happiest person on earth having this beautiful job that is stable and steady.
Yeah.
And that was the last year I had a job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Kevin, how long did it take from conception into having stability financially and in the platform, in the software stack? Because the technology is very hard to actually make it stable once you have the product market fit, right?
Yeah, you're asking for how long it took for the business to become financially stable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess, a few years. It's like, I feel like went from a place of survival into growth mode. And that was like a feeling where it just changed how we thought about things, at least for me. There was always like, we have to figure out what's next to keep the motion going. And then it became more of a like, how big and how fast can we go with this? And that was exciting, right? But we needed to unlock that business model that I was just describing earlier and figure out how do we break into the employer market and start scaling that. And at the same time, there is a heavy human component to our business, right? So we're not just a software solution. We have this care team. These are mostly social workers, but essentially professional caregivers, and they are a large part of our service, right? They're actually the most important part. They create that human empathy, and the challenge has always been, how do we apply technology to scale that and maintain quality and have some level of consistency without taking the human element out of it? And that has also been, a thing that we've evolved a lot over the years, and one of the areas that technology plays a big role.
I didn't know that you actually guys had caregivers. You are actually in the field. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, so to be clear, these are not on the ground people in the home. They are the project managers. They're a virtual relationship you have with your care coordinator, like you might with a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And they will then, if you, for example, need an in-home aide or a nanny or something else, we will find and vet candidates, do the background checks, interview them, and then let you make the final decision and hire those people directly. So it's not Wealthy's employees who are going into your home or doing on-the-ground work, but we're coordinating the whole thing and staying close to the whole family as it evolves.
That is fantastic, Kevin. You must feel so happy and satisfied that you actually made it work, right?
Yeah. It's hard to believe when I look back now and how many years it's been, and it would have just been a dream to get to where we are today. And we have a Slack channel where testimonials feed into automatically from our NPS surveys, and it's amazing the things people say. And I try not to get numb to it, because nowadays there's just so many just flowing in every day, and it's amazing to see that each one of those is a life or a family that we've positively impacted.
It's beautiful. How large is your organization
now? Just around 300 employees.
So you did really scale up. And when you started, it was only your co-founder and you? Only the two of you guys?
Yep. Yeah, it was the two of us, and then pretty soon after that, we hired the woman who ended up becoming the head of our care team. And the next hire after that was a few months later, our now chief experience officer. But he was very much a designer, and I'm the engineer. With the two of us together, basically really figured out the product side of it for those early years. And then went a long time before we started hiring other engineering and product folks. Stayed pretty lean the first couple of years. But then in the past, several years really scaled up, and that's been another part of the journey.
When most people say startup, they think that it's an enterprise that has been around for a year and a half, 2 years, right? They don't realize how long it takes to become successful, right? Like this example of the first company that I exited, it took 15 years. 15 years to exit.
Yeah. Everybody, thinks there's like these overnight successes, but they don't realize how long people have been working on it before it became a success.
How did you manage your relationship with your new wife, knowing that she needed to know that you had to put a lot of extra time if you wanted to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a lot of balancing how we were gonna take care of everything else that needed to happen in our lives. I'm fortunate that, we became more successful and had a larger team before her and I started a family. So I have a 3-year-old son now, and obviously that has taken up a lot of our time as well in a good way.
Congratulations.
So it's forced us to, have some good balance in our life. And at the same time, she's actually been pursuing her passion and becoming a filmmaker, and that has often had to ask on me to, be supportive or adjust our schedules to support her pursuits there. But it's easy for me to do that, and especially because she did that for me in the earlier years when there were a lot of long hours or, late night things happening. I remember on our honeymoon, I ended up doing a call with an investor because we are trying to close a round, and like literally no time off from this, right? I've always got to be on call when you're a founder.
I remember those days, and to be honest, I almost lost my wife and my kids, because my kids they were like in the first decade of their life when I started. So it was a critical time where you had to go for for football games and activities at the school. I could never be there, and it really impacted my personal life, but also I got addicted to work because it took so long to take off.
Mm-hmm.
I got used to it. I got used to the rush. I got used to the hyperactivity. And then when I needed to slow down, I couldn't. So I would be home and I would be like anxious to get back to my computer keyboard, right?
Yeah.
So I had to detoxify from that after I became successful, but it was hard. It was very hard.
Yeah. No, definitely. I definitely get called out for looking at my phone too often sometimes. And, we actually have a practice. We don't always stick to it very well, but like at least every other weekend, having one night that's screen free. We're not allowed to look at screens or even watch something on TV, and just read or do something else. So you got to impose those things on yourself sometimes.
For sure. For me, it took almost a heart attack. I actually had a heart attack in 2011 because I had the push notifications from the BlackBerry so much that one day I actually collapsed because of the stress. So since then, my phone is off. The notifications are off all the time, to the point that if my wife wants to phone me, it goes right into voicemail. So they know that if they want to reach me, they gotta do email, because I control that and I just check it every once in a while, right?
Yeah. I never went that far, thankfully, but there was definitely a period when the phone was the first thing I'd look at in the morning, or even wake up in the middle of the night and look at something and check it on it, or have an idea, need to do something at 3 a.m. for no reason. And yeah, I'm still on pager duty. Fortunately, I don't get paged very often, and that's a great incentive as well to make sure you're building resilient applications.
For sure, yes. Kevin, do you had any leadership experience before you started this new venture?
Yeah, so when my final years at Goldman, I was managing a small team there, and went through some great training programs there before I got into this. It was a very different situation, obviously, being part of a much larger org, and everything that was going on there was a different journey than being a CTO at a scaling startup. But yeah, I was a previous leader there as well.
What has been your hardest challenge as a leader of a large group now? Because I know not all the 300 employees report to you, but you're still the co-founder and you're still responsible. What have you learned from that experience?
Quite a lot. Let's see. I think one thing that's always top of mind for me, especially as a founder, is just maintaining the culture, or at least trying to shape it as it continues to shift and evolve, right? And obviously, just every new person that joins brings with them their own experience and ways that they think things should work, and so on. And so trying to make sure that we still have the culture, or a culture that we feel great about as we continue to grow and evolve. That's always an ongoing thing. Obviously scaling up has meant multiple layers in management, and then I've become further removed from some of the day-to-day details, and that's like a different challenge, obviously, to have change occur through other people and make sure that everyone's rowing the same direction across multiple teams and things like that have also been a great learning experience for me.
That was the hardest thing that I had to do as a technologist. When I finally had to let go of coding and doing architecture work, which was my passion, and realizing that I could hire people that were better and smarter than me and trust them the way they did it. That, it took years, honestly. If I would have done it earlier, I would have been 10 times more successful faster. But I had this mindset where if I don't do it, it's not done right. And it was just ego and fear.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that. And, because I wrote so much of the code from the early years, I still get pulled into things occasionally to be like, why is it done this way? And usually not for a good reason, but I miss that sometimes. And I try to, even when I get tempted to write code or something, I stay out of the critical path though, because I know it's just not going to work out.
I know. I remember the last time I wrote code was in 2014. And, we had this client that needed a mobile app, but it was for a large retailer. And we just didn't have anybody. We were maxed out, the whole team. So, I could have pushed HR to hire somebody fast, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to take it's a prototype. I'm going to take it on myself. And so I wrote this beautiful mobile app. I haven't touched mobile development in a long time. Actually, I never did it before. And I did the prototype and I showed it. I showed it to the team and they took it over and continued with. And that is exactly what happened. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And they didn't have done this way. They realized what I did was just a puzzle. I just put a puzzle together that actually worked and looked nice.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I don't know. Now I try to experiment with things on the side, but I expect that they're not going to go to production.
Yeah. You know what I did? To satisfy my craving of creating an idea, thinking, and algorithms, I started to learn how to invest in the stock market, doing options trading, because I still needed, my brain wanted the two big monitors. I wanted to have the architecture diagrams, and I wasn't allowed to do that anymore. So what can I do outside of business context that could actually help me? So I did, I did a 3-year journey into options trading, and I had all my screens open. It was awesome. I had triggers, but it was real money. And sometimes I would lose a ton of money, and then I would recover it back the next week until I was taking most of my time.
Yeah. My outlet is more like home automation. I just like to mess with automating things in my personal life that don't need to be automated, and that's kind of fun too.
That's fantastic, Kevin. Kevin, it's been almost 40 minutes. I don't want to abuse your time. What's in the future for you?
Great question. I'm just trying to bring this as far as we can and reach as many people as possible. There's caregivers everywhere, and this problem is not solved yet. And it feels like, even though 10 years in, still getting started, and we're gonna hope we can reach as many people as possible.
It's beautiful what you do, and I never heard of it before, which means you guys need to do more advertising. So I'm so glad that I actually did this interview with you. We'll do our best to promote this episode for the audience, Kevin. 2 questions, actually. Number 1, if you had a billboard on front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
It's a great question for my head of marketing. I think, our tagline is love over logistics. And I love that, right? We want people to spend time with their loved ones. And, that's the important thing here. How do we pay for that is a different question. But, I want people to talk about caregiving. I think it's something a lot of people are going through, and they just don't even really talk about it in their work lives and their personal lives. And so something to that effect.
Well, you don't really care until it hits you. That's the problem, right? That you're fine, you don't even know what it is because it hasn't been in your life, but eventually it happens. And then what do you do, right?
Yeah, almost everyone goes through this eventually.
Exactly. Kevin, thank you so much. If people like to find out about the app or about your caregiving facilities, or how if they want to hire a service, or if I'm an employer and I want to add this as my benefits package, how can we reach you?
Yeah, Wellthy.com, WELLTHY. and you'll find everything you need there, or reach out to me directly. I'm happy to send you in the right direction.
Beautiful. Kevin, are you on LinkedIn?
Yep, on LinkedIn. I'm not very active on other social media, sorry.
Yeah, I'm the same. I only have LinkedIn and that's it. All the other social media you see about me is my team. Kevin, thank you so much. God bless you. Have a beautiful rest of the week and keep changing this world for a better place.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Blessings.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.